Hello students. In the previous lecture of Indian Penal Code, we had started chapter number 3 of IPC, which deals with the relevant provisions of punishment which are inflicted under the provisions of Indian Penal Code. In the previous lecture, we had discussed section number 53 of IPC, in which originally 6 types of punishment had been laid down, but by Act number 17 of 1949, with effect from 6th of April 1949, one of the punishment had been omitted from section number 53, and that punishment was transportation for life or for a term. In respect of IPC, transportation means transporting a criminal beyond the seas. Before the introduction of section 53A in the Indian Penal Code, it was a punishment which was lesser grave than the punishment of death. And this punishment was inflicted during the British rule in India. What has been happened under this punishment during the British rule in India? The offenders who were awarded transportation were generally sent to the Andaman Nicobar Island. This practice of transporting criminals had been defended by criminologists because, according to them, this punishment eliminated those criminals from the population who were beyond reformation. But basically, the purpose of this punishment was to suppress the freedom fight in India. This punishment was in practice in England as well, in which dangerous criminals were sent to the United States and Australia during 18th and 19th century. But it is very important to note here that this form of punishment had been proved a big failure wherever it had been tried by the Britishers. In England, this form of punishment was abolished in the year 1854, whereas in India, this form of punishment had been omitted by Act number 17 of 1949 with effect from 6th of April 1949. That means in India, this punishment had been omitted after the independence of India. In Indian Penal Code, section 53A has been inserted to make it clear that with effect from 1st of January 1956, if any transportation for life has been mentioned in any other act which is now in force in India, then transportation for life has been substituted as imprisonment for life under any other law now in force in India, or under any instrument or order having effect by virtue of any law which has been repealed in India. It is very important to note here that section 53A talks about this substitution in relation to any other criminal law which is now in force in India, not in respect of Indian Penal Code, because Under the provisions of Indian Penal Code, this form of punishment has already been omitted. Prior to 1st of January 1956, it had been repealed with effect from 6th of April 1949. So this section 53 has a relation with any other law now in force in India or under any instrument or order having effect by virtue of any law which has been repealed in India. Okay, it has also been made clear by this section 53A that in case any transportation for a term has already been passed by the court before the commencement of the Code of Criminal Procedure Amendment Act 1955, then the offender shall be dealt with in the same manner as if he had been sentenced to rigorous imprisonment for the same term. Means to say that if the punishment for transportation for a term has already been passed before the commencement of Code of Criminal Procedure 1955, then transportation for a term shall be understood as rigorous imprisonment for that term. Okay, let us see what is written in section 53A. Section 53A makes it very clear that how from the commencement of Code of Criminal Procedure Amendment Act 1955, transportation shall be construed. How the construction of this term will be made in the future. Section 53A states construction of reference to transportation. Section 53A subsection 1 subject to the provisions of subsection 2 and subsection 3. That means after considering the provisions of subsection 2 and subsection 3 of section 53A, any reference to transportation for life in any other law for the time being in force or in any instrument or order having effect by virtue of any law or any enactment repealed shall be construed as reference to imprisonment for life. That means to say, if any other law provides transportation for life, then it shall be construed as imprisonment for life. Or if any law which has been repealed, any order or any instrument has already been passed, then transportation for life shall be understood to be the imprisonment for life. Section 53A subsection 2 states that in every case in which a sentence of transportation for a term has already been passed before the commencement of the Code of Criminal Procedure Amendment Act 1955, the offender shall be dealt with in the same manner as if sentenced to rigorous imprisonment for the same term. That means to say, if any sentence has already been passed and that sentence has been passed before the commencement of the Code of Criminal Procedure Amendment Act 1955, then that sentence of transportation for a term shall be understood to be the rigorous imprisonment for the same term. Section 53A subsection 3 states that if there is any reference to transportation for a term or to transportation for any shorter term by whatever name called in any other law for the time being in force, it shall be deemed to have been omitted. So if any law is now in force and if the words has been written as transportation for a term, then it shall be deemed that this transportation for a term or transportation for any shorter term have been omitted from the commencement of this section 53A. Section 53A subsection 4 states any reference to transportation in any other law other than Indian Penal Code for the time being enforced shall, if the expression means transportation for life, be construed as a reference to imprisonment for life. If the expression means transportation for any shorter term, be deemed to have been omitted. In Gopal Vinayak Godse versus State of Maharashtra, AIR 1961, Supreme Court 602, it was held by the Supreme Court of India that a person sentenced to transportation for life or any other term before the enactment of Section 53A was to be treated as a person sentenced to rigorous imprisonment for life. Transportation for life shall be treated as rigorous imprisonment for a term transportation for life shall be treated as rigorous imprisonment for term, and transportation for any other term shall be construed as rigorous imprisonment for that term, as the case may be. So this is something about transportation for life or transportation for a term. If you like my lecture, then please subscribe my channel to get the notifications of my next videos. If you want to get notes of my law lectures, then you can go to Google and type lawarticles2020.blogspot.com. Thank you very much.